Anne Murray and her husband Bob were visiting this week from Florida. I ran into them at the Drake Hotel. Anne was wearing a lovely aqua and blue scarf and blouse. I commented on it because here in Chicago, especially in winter, we don't see people wearing a lot of color. Anne and I talked about how it seems harder and harder to find anything with any color in it, and that um, in general, there seems to be fewer and fewer choices in the world. Anne said that's because of computer algorithms. They're trying to put us all into little boxes, and they're trying to get us all into the same little boxes. When I worked in advertising, it was all about resolution and dots. Now it's all digital pixels or squares. I understand the concept of thread count in sheets because it makes for a more comfortable night's sleep. But does anyone think the direction of the digital world is going to make for a better night's sleep? Welcome, welcome to Sunday Coffee Hour. I'm Stanley Smith. At Sunday Coffee Hour, we talk about everything and nothing. This Sunday, we talked about artificial intelligence, the plague, and the book called Evil Geniuses. We also talked about being an ass clown. The readings at Washington National Cathedral were from Genesis, the story of Nicodemus, and the message that we just can't figure it out sometimes. And from Romans, we're due our wages for work, but we're also due what we deserve by faith. At Washington National Cathedral, Randy preached a sermon. He told a story about jumping out of an airplane as a young person. And in art school, when I studied art, I was told about certain themes you really should never approach in art. And that was, the mountain, the sea, the sunset, some topics and some subject matter just not worth going there. And I think Randy's story about jumping out of the airplane is one of those sermon stories. It just seems a little cliche. I think in my time, I remember Allie Trowbridge at Fourth Pres giving a sermon about lying on the mountaintop and seeing the stars at night. It was a little trite. And even Dana at National Cathedral, she preached about taking a moon bath in the mountains of Colorado. And as trite and as silly as the story might be, Randy, he made something out of it, conveying the idea that we all make plans in our lives, but we also have the experience of how our life actually works out. It's it's not often the same thing. At St. James, Lisa preached about the Pharisees, and she said the Pharisees are often the ecclesiastical punchline to a lot of sermons and scriptures, almost like it's like they're the punchline to a joke. But when in fact, the Pharisees really in their time were, as she described them, very much the progressives of the time. They were trying to interpret the law and be as swinging and liberal as they could in its interpretations and implementations. And Lisa said that Jesus, ironically, was he offered often countering them with a more traditional and conservative reasoning. I was struck during Lisa's sermon that Jesus really never gave us a list of things not to do, similar to the concept of rabbinical fencing that Lisa described and attributed to Amy Jill Levin last week. Jesus was more apt to not tell us what not to do in order to not throw us off course. My mom's been rewatching reruns of All in the Family this week and this month because it's all she can find on TV worth watching. And she was reminded of the bigotry and the parody of that in the All in the Family episodes. And it's an example of what not to do without telling people or banging them over the head by telling them not to do it. The The episodes aired in a time when we still lived in a world where everybody had the right to be a bigot or not. We had the freedom of choice. I had a visitor once at church. She was a minister herself, and she and I got in a conversation about the phenomenon of white churches and black churches here in the United States, and that people have a choice, and when they're given the choice, people choose to discriminate and segregate. This is actually protected under the U.S. Constitution, and churches, they're free to do this as well. Although many churches today push integration for charitable tax consideration and for grant writing. You can't legislate morality. God didn't even try to do that. He gave us laws, but even breaking the laws did not bring condemnation. Consequences, of course, happen, but not condemnation. It's a different thing. Only God can condemn, and he chose not to do it. During this time of Lent, we've had these readings 2 weeks in a row from Genesis and the Garden of Eden, and the reminder of the starting point of the story, the tree of good and evil. We're still doing it. We still make everything into a good thing and a bad thing, a right thing or a wrong thing, and it really isn't getting us anywhere. Similar to what Randy said, it's not how we experience our lives. We make everything a right or wrong decision and into a question. It's really easy to be a good person when we can point to all the bad people around us as being wrong. Maybe we should have less questions and instead of following the facts and science, lean into the knowledge of our seeing and of our own experience. Only God can condemn. No one can step into that space except God. When we hear people telling us they know right and wrong, it's probably an indication that they're headed in the wrong direction. In the tradition of prophetic voice or prophetic message, I read recently that prophetic messages are often dark, pessimistic messages, but in order to be a prophetic message, they have to end with a message of hope. If you're hearing messages that are dependent on destroying others and not offering hope, it's probably not a prophetic message. When I asked at Sunday Coffee Hour, what is the message of all of this? I was told the message today is awareness. We have the opportunity for awareness in it all. That seems like a pretty hopeful message. We don't have to have all the answers. We don't need to figure it all out. We just have to have a little awareness and an increasing amount of awareness. If we're open to being aware and open to the possibility that we can be aware, it's a space. It's an opening in the space between our knowing and our living selves. And that's a place that we're very, very apt to experience God in our lives and in the life of the world. If you would like to join us at Sunday Coffee Hour, I do think we end on a hopeful message each week. Sunday Coffee Hour is every Sunday at 12 noon Central Time on Zoom. I will include my email in the description of this video. I'll be happy to send you an invitation. And as always, I look forward to seeing you very, very soon.